Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you're connecting from. Welcome to yet another exclusive Citrix Ready technical webinar where we showcase how Citrix and our partners like Ivanti have integrated to deliver valuable products and solutions to common problems faced by our customers. Today we'll be talking to our Citrix Ready partner Ivanti and see how their user workspace management can help secure and optimize Citrix Workspace. And we'll also talk about their recent acquisition of RES Software. I'm Anil Kumar, your host today, and I'm part of Citrix Ready technical marketing team, leading the network ecosystem. I have about 8 years of experience in total, and I've been with Citrix for a couple of years now. Along with me today, we have Simon Townsend. He's Chief Technologist at Ivanti. Hey, Simon. Welcome to this technical webinar series. Could you talk a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Anil. Thank you for the introduction. So I was with the AbSense business for about 15 and a half years. I've worked with Citrix technology for a little bit longer than that. I won't say how long further. So, but I understand the Citrix technology and the Citrix ecosystem, and yeah, within EMEA, I work very closely with Citrix, the Citrix Ready team, the Citrix field teams, all of the Citrix and Avanti partners, and probably personally I look after somewhere around over 2,000 joint customers between Citrix and Avanti.
All right, that's a vast experience. Pleasure to have you here, Simon.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so moving on. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Citrix Ready, since this is a Citrix Ready technical webinar. So just to give a very brief overview, Citrix Ready is a technology partner program where we showcase and recommend third-party products, solutions, and services that demonstrate compatibility with Citrix. So this really helps customers to quickly and easily find solutions that are recommended by us, and all these products and solutions are available in Citrix Ready Marketplace, and that's hosted at the below website, citrix.com/ready. And if you're a partner, if you have a product, and if you'd like to join the Citrix Ready program, please visit the below link. It has all the information about what the program is all about, and how you could really register and participate and become a partner with us. All right, so we are very proud to have Ivanti here today, and without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Simon. But just one housekeeping item to keep in mind: if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question panel, and we will address them during the Q&A session in the end. All right, hi Simon, welcome once again to the webinar, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Anil. Myself and Anil have done a few of these webinars in the past, and many of you and Anil knows that at times I do like to talk. So I've asked Anil to jump in and ask any questions along the way that he feel may be relevant. Likewise, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank those of you that have joined this afternoon's webinar. Thank you for your time. And if you have questions, then please use the chat window to ask those questions, and we're going to spend some time at the end to go over some Q&A. It has been a relatively busy time for us at Avanti over the last 12 months. And so there's a little bit to update you on, and I'm sure some of you have got further questions which I'd be happy to answer. But I also really want to talk to you about some of the key value propositions and the key reasons why people look at putting what was the AbSense technology, now the Avanti technology, together with Citrix, what they're using it for, how they're deploying it. And then I'd like to also talk to you about how the technology can help enable Office 365 deployments on Citrix XenApp XenDesktop, and also how we can help enable and accelerate some of those deployments that people are now looking at as we start to move our workloads to the cloud and look towards taking Citrix Cloud as a service. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. For those of you that don't know, the Ivanti, or the business prior to the Avanti acquisition, the business that's been working with Citrix for many, many years now and has been a Citrix Ready partner for many years, was formerly known as AppSense. We were created in 1999. We were actually created out of a need in a Citrix environment. In fact, our parent company at the time was deploying a Citrix infrastructure, an old MetaFrame environment, and they found that users were logging on to that MetaFrame desktop and running applications that perhaps the IT administrators didn't want them to run. That not only caused a security concern, but at the time caused a performance challenge. There were various executables, games, standalone exes that users were able to run on the Citrix server that were ultimately having a negative effect on the other users on that box. And so that customer asked us at the time, well, hey, look, how can we control what users can and can't run? How can we stop users running unauthorized executables on our nice, clean Citrix server estate? And so we created some technology to solve that problem, and then over the next couple of years we started to look at other common challenges that people were facing as they started to move to a multi-win, multi-user type of environment. We were never really solving challenges with the Citrix technology. We were solving challenges with the underlying operating system and filling some of the gaps that both Windows Terminal Services, RDSH, had, but also, as time moved on, solving challenges that people had just on virtual desktops and then traditional desktops as well. As AppSense, we had about 3,500 joint customers with Citrix, and thanks to some additional acquisitions and some additional technology, we're now well over 5,000. Really what we're about, though, is about how do we help secure a Citrix desktop, secure Citrix applications, and protect those environments from users running unauthorized executables, protect those environments from ransomware, and we've all seen some of the outbreaks that have happened recently. Also deliver a great user experience. Citrix do deliver, thanks to things like ICA, thanks to how their clients are. They can deploy a very rich experience across any network to any device, and we really sit on top of that, trying to improve that user experience even further. And also, how do we help migrate and help people migrate to new versions of Citrix, things like the Citrix Cloud, and adopt Citrix technologies much faster? How can we actually solve more use cases? How can we deploy to more users, more sites, etc.? So that's where we are now. We are now formally known as Ivanti. The products that I'm going to talk about today have all been rebranded as Ivanti products, and you'll start to see some of those new names, some of that new naming. As an organization, though, Ivanti have been around for some time. Ivanti, the name is new. It came around in January of this year, and it was the coming together of two larger companies, one called Landesk, one called Heat, and it was Landesk that had acquired the AppSense technology last year. But Landesk and Heat coming together to form Ivanti have got a very, very similar vision, and that vision is really around how do we start to simplify, automate, and secure what we now all know as the digital workplace. That digital workplace is made up of Citrix technology. It's made up of Windows desktops, Linux desktops, iOS, Android device that Citrix is managing. But it also extends further than that. It includes the traditional desktop. It includes Mac devices now. It includes even printers that are in my network. And it also starts to incorporate how we are changing the delivery of IT within business, and starts to incorporate how IT is changing to be more in line with business. Business no longer just wants IT to support the business, but in fact business wants IT to actually help drive the top line number. And where the business wants IT to do more for them, what we need to do is we need to try and really start to automate perhaps some of those tasks and some of those things that have typically caused us far too much pain and taken too much time in the past. A good example of that would be patching. You know, some of our customers prior to utilizing our technology can spend days every month worrying about patching. When the WannaCry outbreak took place earlier in the year, organizations and IT came together, security heads, end user computing teams came together and ran around worrying about, you know, what systems are patched. Are there any workstations out there that don't have the latest patches? Have we been hit by the WannaCry outbreak? And really we need to spend far less time in that reactive mode and far more time worrying about how we're going to help the business grow and achieve far greater things. And that's what we really mean when we start to talk about automated and securing the digital workplace. Now, to deliver that, Avanti is actually broken up into 4 key areas. So our go-to-market is in 4 areas, and our business revenues are split in these 4 areas as well. The first area that we work on with our customers is around IT asset management. Many of you will be more than familiar with the case of software asset management and auditing. IT asset management includes software asset management and starts to look at how we can onboard and offboard users, how we can actually start to manage some of the hardware assets in our environment, as well as just being prepared for software audits, both on the workstation, on the Citrix environment, but also in the data center for things like Oracle and SQL and SAP as an example. And we have a number of technologies in that IT asset management space. In fact, some of those technologies can help an organization prepare for a move to Citrix, just as an example. The second area that our business focuses on is around operational security, and that's really around making sure that we are protecting our estate, particularly around endpoint protection, but also at times in the data center, against all of the nasties that are out there at the moment. The reason we call it operational security is that we have a very strong belief that as we move forward, security is everybody's problem, and to achieve what we want to achieve, security needs to be built in and it needs to be operationalized, so again that it's simple and that it's automated. And I'm going to touch on some of those areas today in terms of how we can help a Citrix deployment be more secure in a very simple and efficient way. The third area there is around service management. And that includes everything from simple service desk ticketing systems all the way through to true service management, and some of our solutions and technologies working in the DevOps type of area as well. Service management forms a very important part of what we do as a business, because actually service desk tools are where first line support engineers sit. Service management tools provide service catalog and IT stores that users can access and raise support calls and request technology and software from IT. And so service management really can start to become the glue that starts to introduce some of these new workflows and deal with some of that automation I spoke about before. The last area of our business focuses on UEM. That's not to be confused with user environment management, but actually stands for Unified Endpoint Management. And that really starts to look at how can we start to manage all of these workspaces, including Citrix, from a single pane of glass. That last piece there around Unified Endpoint Management does include an area we call User Workspace Management, which is what some of you will know both the RES and also the Absence technology best for. So we can wrap all of that up with some very neat reporting and some dashboard technology that I want to show you at the end of this session as well. But a lot of this is around how can we help an organization understand their assets better, secure them, manage them better, and then tie all of that into a more simplified, automated approach. And if you take a look at this screen, it's a little bit more detailed, but it starts to call out what we do in some of those areas. Today we're really going to focus on user workspace management. We're going to be talking about this concept of environment management within a Citrix workspace. We're going to be looking at patch management, application control and privilege management in the Citrix space and on a Citrix desktop. And we're also then going to take a look at how we can use some of those tools to manage things like Office 365 and move move people to the cloud a lot quicker. Just in case you haven't seen it, but if you search for me or you search for Go Avanti on Twitter, you may well have seen this slide before. I show this slide simply to show you what now makes up some of our DNA. There's a number of brands on that slide that you may have been familiar with in the past. If I call out Lamention in the bottom there, Lamention was extremely well known for doing device management or USB control on Windows endpoints, and there's a lot of Citrix customers I know that use that device control on their endpoints. Some of you may be familiar with the Shavlik technology, top right hand corner there, the market leader in third-party patching solutions as well. So the ability to patch not just Microsoft applications and operating systems, but also other third-party apps. And then the front range piece of technology, very well known, Heat front range technology, very well known for providing service desks to many, many organizations as well. You'll see there on the bottom right hand side that after the Avanti name was formed in January of this year, there's been 2 additional acquisitions. One of those is Concorde. Concorde have got a SaaS-based software asset management piece of technology that now forms and makes up part of our offering in that IT asset management space. And then also the most recent acquisition of Res Software, which came about and was announced probably about 2 weeks ago now. Res have been working in the Citrix space also since 1999, extremely well known and well loved for doing an element of workspace management and managing the Citrix environment, configuring the desktop and doing some profile management, but also very well known for their automation engine and more recently their IT store and identity products. Those identity products linking into other third-party systems, again, helping with that concept of onboarding and offboarding users. If you take a look at what they do in that automation space and you take a look at what they do around identity, and you then couple that with what I said before around what Ivanti is trying to achieve around automation, simplification, you start to look at those 4 key areas that we work in, it starts to make a lot of sense why the Res technology was a perfect fit for Avanti as well. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the Res technology today, but nevertheless, me and Anil have already been talking about what we can do moving forward, and I'm sure if any of you want to get in contact with us, I'd be more than happy to follow up and get people that know far more than I do about that Res technology to give you an insight into how that works and demo those products. But needless to say that particularly on that automation and the identity side of things, they really do play to a big part in the top level message and direction that Avanti is going. What I do want to talk to you about today is what was formerly the AppSense portfolio of products, which are now known as Avanti User Workspace Manager technology. So it's a suite of technologies made up of 5 components: Application Control, Environment Manager, Performance Manager, File Director, and Insight. And I really want to drill down into some detail, particularly around the first 3 and what value they can add when you're looking at deploying a Citrix Zen app or Zen desktop environment. But if you go to the website now, if you come to us and you download the software, that is now known as the Avanti User Workspace Management Suite, and it is made up of those products. These products can be purchased individually. They can be purchased on a per user basis. If you buy them on a per user basis, it gives you the entitlement to install them not just on a Citrix environment, but also on a traditional Windows desktop. So as a user roams perhaps from a Windows 10 laptop to a virtual desktop environment and then has got Zen app applications coming into that environment, you can have the technology installed for that user on all 3 of those platforms to help secure, optimize and manage that user's workspace across both the physical and the Citrix estate. And again, regardless of whether that Citrix estate is being delivered on-premise or from the cloud. Before I dive into the products, there is one thing I wanted to touch on, which was that WannaCry outbreak. And since then, we've seen NotPetya still causing organizations a problem now. And there is no doubt about it, whether we look at NotPetya as a piece of malware, or whether we look at WannaCry as a piece of ransomware or a vulnerability, you know, it's become more and more apparent, sadly, over the last 6 months, that not enough organizations are taking enough preventative steps to help secure their environment against phishing attacks, ransomware or malware that may be coming into the environment. And the WannaCry one was a really interesting one, because it wasn't just a piece of ransomware that someone double-clicked from their email and it encrypted their files. It also utilized a vulnerability, and that vulnerability allowed it to then spread across SMB shares and then start to run and encrypt files on other endpoints. And we obviously saw that take over the globe very sadly most recently. The NotPetya outbreak of recent times, again, not quite a piece of ransomware, but more a piece of malware, because this time, instead of encrypting all the files and holding the user to ransom, it decided it was going to encrypt the whole box. So your whole machine was then encrypted, and hence it was more a piece of malware than it was ransomware. And in fact, in this particular case, it was interesting because that required admin privileges to run as well. Now, there's an argument that says, if you move your desktop and your applications into a Citrix Zen app and Zen desktop environment, then everything's being run from the data center, and therefore there is less risk, and you've more than likely reduced your attack surface area. In fact, if you've got Windows 10 desktops out there in the wild, and a lot of your line of business and mission critical applications being delivered via Citrix, they're being delivered almost in isolation, thanks to ICA, from such attacks. However, what we do know is that some desktops are delivered from the data center. We do know that organizations still deploy Office, and more importantly, things like Outlook and Internet Explorer from their Citrix environment, and hence that Windows desktop, whether it is an RDSH server or whether it is a Windows 7, Windows 10 desktop, although it's being delivered via Citrix, it is still a desktop, and therefore it is just as vulnerable as a traditional desktop was. Again, no fault of Citrix, these are just how Windows works. And so one thing that I've been talking a lot about over the last 6 months with Citrix customers and traditional desktop customers alike is, how can Avanti actually helps secure those environments, and secure those environments in a way that doesn't require a massive amount of administration. The last thing we want to do is put a load of effort and additional administration into how we manage our Citrix estate. The last thing we want to do is affect the performance of that Citrix estate, particularly if it's a Zen app environment with 20, 30, 40 users logged onto it. Now, the way that we do that is we actually listen to what the industry is talking about, and what the industry is saying at the moment is there is a very neat way in which you can start to prevent some of these ransomware attacks. In fact, these aren't our numbers. 85% was a number that was highlighted by the Australian Department of Defence last year, the Australian Signals Directorate, and they simply said that, you know, if you had patched your operating system, in other words, patched the Windows 7 desktop that was being delivered by Zen Desktop, or the RDSH environment that was being delivered via Zen app, and patched the applications, including third-party applications, and had a form of application whitelisting or application control in place, and your users weren't local admins, then you could have prevented 85% of all the ransomware attacks that came out in the last 12 months. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there are not some attacks still left out there. You know, according to those numbers, there's still 15% of ways in which an attack could take place. But that is a big number. That is a large number, and a very easy way in which you can reduce the attack surface area. So what I really want to do today is initially focus on how we, with our application control technology, start to implement application whitelisting or application control and remove admin privileges, particularly when we're looking at deploying a Windows 10 desktop to a user that may need local admin rights on that Windows 10 desktop. But needless to say, on the left-hand side there are technologies that I'm not talking about today that come from the Shavlik acquisition that allow us to very easily patch all the operating systems that are delivered via Citrix XenApp XenDesktop and all the third-party applications that are deployed. In fact, that same patching technology can apply all of the hotfixes to XenApp and XenDesktop as well, very, very easily. Gives you complete visibility of what's patched and what's not, and then gives you the ability to patch. But let's dive a little bit deeper into application control. Application control is predominantly there to help protect against ransomware, control which authorized applications can and can't run. I'm going to come on to that in a little bit more detail. Allow us to remove admin rights from our users so that we don't have users roaming the world with local admin rights or logging onto our Citrix estate and having to have local admin privileges, which could always be dangerous. And gives us the ability to manage all types of applications, not just 32-bit, 64-bit, but some of these new ones that have come in, like universal applications in Windows 10, and also web-based apps, because a lot of our applications are now delivered via the web. The first thing we can do with our application control is we can actually start to resolve the problem that is on the screen at the moment. And that problem on the screen at the moment is very simply that if we give our users standard rights, non-admin privilege rights, then they run as a standard user, we're nice and safe. However, when they then try and perform a task or run an application that requires admin rights, they get that shield come up and the UAC prompt comes up. So in a lot of environments, we give our users local admin rights because we have a line of business application or the user requires to perform a task that needs admin rights. But instead of giving just that task or just that application admin privileges, we give the user complete admin privileges. And that causes challenges. That means that users can log on to Xen desktop environments and start to break things and change things. We end up with image sprawl. On the traditional desktop, again, we end up with image sprawl and users are installing things and doing things perhaps that they shouldn't. And our risk is increased because we're susceptible to those pieces of ransomware that need admin rights to run. And one of the things I'm going to show you in a second is how the application control can actually do what we call elevation on demand. So we can actually have users as standard users, but if they need to run an application that requires admin privileges or perform a task like changing their date and their time that needs admin rights, we can elevate those seamlessly to the user on demand in a very, very simple way. The other thing that application control is obviously doing is application control. As well as deciding whether an application runs with admin privileges or not, we can decide whether we will block it or allow it. And when we choose to block it or allow it, that very simply gives us the ability to block ransomware and block the nasty executables that users are trying to run and only allow them to run those applications that we actually want them to. We can also control web-based applications, so I can actually monitor what URLs people are going to. We use this a lot, again, in Citrix environments where people are connecting from both the office and from home to their Citrix environment and open up a web browser that's running on the hosted desktop, and IT want to control what URLs someone can go to, not just based on who they are, but perhaps where they've connected in from. And we can tell across the suite when someone is connected, disconnected, locked their machine, unlocked their machine, they've been idle for a while. We can tell whether they're coming in off a thin client, whether they're connecting from their iPad, whether they're connecting from the local office, or whether they're connecting from home. We can even, and I'll come on to it in a second, is link into some of the other Citrix technology to make those decisions. But in this case, I can do what's known as either URL redirection or actually block a URL. We can also, with our application control, prevent what we call the double hop. So as a user on the left-hand side of the screen comes in over the internet, hits the NetScaler, and logs on to the Citrix Xen desktop as an example, we may then want to control not just what applications they can run, but also what parts of the network they can get access to. You may want to stop them from accessing certain file shares. You may want them to not RDP onto yet another Zen app or Zen desktop server. This is very popular in many of our joint customers, where you've got contractors or third parties utilizing the Citrix estate that sits just behind the NetScaler there, and prevents third parties and contractors from accessing perhaps server farms that they shouldn't be gaining access to. It actually allows you to reduce the number of Citrix server farms that you've got, and in many cases we've seen organizations achieve that consolidation for that very reason. So preventing the double hop is another reason. If you're deploying Windows 10 in a Zen desktop environment, these new style of applications may be causing you concern. We can block those by name or by publisher, again utilizing context, and that may be something that you're worried about. And as I've said on numerous occasions now, context is really king. We're not just basing whether an application can run or not on who the user is or what group they're in, but we've got a contextual rules engine that can monitor changes in the environment and reevaluate what's going on. So we can check to see, is the user logging onto a VDI environment? We can check to see what OU the user might be in, what the IP address of the machine we're logging onto. But there are session variables in there as well. We can tell what the IP address of the connecting device is in the Citrix environment. I can tell you what the net BIOS name of the thin client terminal that is being used as they're connecting onto a Citrix Zen app, Zen desktop environment. So I can now start to do application control based on the connecting device, which not only allows us to control what applications people can run, it actually allows us to enforce and provide Microsoft with auditable information on what application licenses they need. So if you're trying to deploy something like Visio or Project in a Citrix environment, we can enforce what's known as per device licensing and give you the auditing information you need to show Microsoft that only a certain number of devices have connected to your Citrix environment, and therefore you don't need licenses for every single device. And that context has been extended over the years. You know, here we can see some of the more Citrix specific ones, actually looking at what the client operating system environment is, looking at what Citrix client is being used, and more commonly used what NetScaler policies or what NetScaler those users have connected through. So I can now control what a user can and can't run on the Citrix desktop based on whether they came through NetScaler 1, NetScaler 2, or whether they passed or failed a NetScaler policy. That gives me complete control as a user connects, disconnects, and roams between the office, roams between home, and is out on the road when they're connected to a Citrix environment. A large number of joint customers use this because they're only allowed to access the trading applications when they're on the trading floor. If the same user disconnects and reconnects to their Citrix server and they're no longer on the trading floor, we need to terminate those types of applications. So it's used for compliance reasons as well. Anil, any questions on anything I've said there?
Right. So you did mention about ransomware and the recent WannaCry attacks. So how exactly the Ivanti suite of products can help prevent prevent such a scenario?
Okay, so in the first case, WannaCry spread via an SMB vulnerability, and our patching solutions have the ability to scan the entire network, both workstations and Citrix desktops and Citrix servers, and very quickly come back with both a detailed but also an executive summary of what vulnerabilities exist out there. So in other words, run me a report and show me out of my 5,000 desktops how many of them are currently unpatched.
Right.
We can provide that information, and we can then patch, and we have a large number of third-party applications in our catalog as well. So for the last 2 years, the top 4 vulnerabilities that were seen were non-Microsoft ones, so ones that WSUS and SCCM as an example are not patching. So first of all, we patch it and secure it, but then secondly, what we offer is this ability to do application control. So here you can see I've got an executable called CryptoLocker on my device, and if I run it, that is actually blocked. I can actually see that the executable has been blocked. I may have double-clicked that knowingly or unknowingly. I don't know. It may have come in via an email, might have presented itself as an Excel or a Word spreadsheet, but that executable is blocked. Likewise, if I try and run a VB script or a PowerShell script, those scripts are also prevented from running. They are user-introduced scripts. They could be nasty, and so by default, our application control technology blocks them. Now, many of the people on the webinar will be sat here thinking, well, perhaps how do you do that? Is that just based on the name? Is it based on the signature of the file? Is it based on reputation? Is it using some sort of artificial intelligence or next generation way of doing it? And it's not. It's very, very simple, and it is extremely effective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my C drive. I'm going to go to Windows. I'm going to go and find System32. I'm going to go to Notepad, and I'm going to try and run Notepad from Windows System32. And what you're going to see is that Notepad runs quite successfully. There is Notepad running on my machine. Now I'm going to take a look at the properties of this file, and I'm going to go into the Security tab, and I'm going to go to Advanced, and I'm going to go and have a look at who the NTFS owner of the file is. NTFS file system, been in the operating system for many, many years. This is something that Windows does automatically. Windows sets the owner of a file to the person that introduced it. So Notepad has been introduced by the trusted installer because it was installed as part of the Windows operating system. If you go and take a look at your Citrix environments today, most of the Windows System32 files will be owned by the trusted installer. Many of the applications that are installed on your Citrix environment would have been installed by the administrators. Yeah, you would have logged onto the box perhaps and installed Office, and they will all those files will be owned by the administrators. Some of you will be using SCCM within your environment. All of the applications that are deployed via SCCM will be owned by the administrators group. Some of you will be using Citrix PVS, and you'll build up an image, installing everything as an administrator, and then locking that one image as a PVS image, and then firing up all your Citrix environment for that. The point is that all of those files that IT have installed that are intended for users to run have been installed by trusted people. If I go and take a copy of Notepad as the user, as in me, Simon Townsend, and I paste it onto my desktop, whilst this executable is still called the same name, it will still have the same signature, still does the same thing. If I try and run it from my desktop, it's blocked. And it's not blocked because it's trying to run from my desktop, it's blocked because Windows, as I did the copy, has changed the ownership properties of the file. That file, introduced by me, copied by me, is therefore owned by me. Windows has made that change. That's standard Windows NTFS ownership things that are going on there. And so when I try and run that executable, the Avanti application control is simply saying someone trusted didn't put this onto the operating system, therefore I'm going to block it. And that's the same for those scripts that I showed earlier. You know, the
Right.
user introduced VB script is blocked, and the admin VB script is allowed to run. And that gives us a very, very simple way of securing a Citrix environment. It's how we've been doing it since 1999, and it ensures the stability of your Citrix farm. It means that you need to worry significantly less about any of those nasty phishing attacks or anything that come through. Same applies to PowerShell, self-extracting zip files. We're checking the lot. Now, you may well have some Zen desktop environments where a user would like to run a particular application. So in this particular case, where they want to run PerSinfo as an executable, in Zen Desktop you may have some power users. What they can do is they can actually request access to an application, and they can put that request in via phone. They can give a code which gives a response code back, or they could send it via email, and again that could be linked into your service management platform, which could kick off a workflow and start to automate the process and allow the user to do that. Likewise, if I go and try and run defrag on my machine. Defrag has got the shield come up, which means when I press it, I get the message that says you need to put admin credentials in. I get the UAC prompt up. My guess is, I'm not sure, Neil, can you see that UAC prompt or not?
No.
You probably can't because we're running on GoToMeeting, so I apologize. Just have to take my word for it that when I click that button there, I get prompted for admin username and password. Now, different to that, if I try and change the date and the time within my environment, I still get this prompt and shield come up here showing me that it is I'm not an administrator and I might need to put my credentials in. But as soon as I click that task, application control elevates that particular task with admin privileges. So any application or any task that's been configured, we can elevate things on demand, and this can become very useful when you're looking at doing things like user installed applications in Zen Desktop. If you're looking at moving forward, if you're looking at doing user installed applications into some of the layering technology that Citrix have now got as well. But it starts to give flexibility. It allows us to move more applications onto a Citrix Zen Desktop environment as well. You'll also see I've got some URL redirection set up, so I can go to Google, I can go to the BBC website, no problem at all. I can go to BBC up here as well and actually hit the website. But if I try and go to Facebook, I'm actually blocked. Facebook is not based on a certain context, might be based on the date and the time, the machine I'm coming in from, the Citrix server I've logged onto, the thin client I'm coming from. I'm not allowed to access that. So I could have blocked access to an intranet site based on the fact that I came in through a NetScaler and I'm at home versus when I'm in the office, I might have been able to access that. Likewise, if I try and go to salesforce.com, we do something called redirection, which, if in case you missed it there, we just redirect salesforce.com to Okta. So we're forcing people to use one website and or another. Likewise, if I wanted to prevent the double hop, I can try and come into I might be logged onto a Citrix Zen Desktop now. I go to an RDP application, so remote launch, remote desktop, and try and connect to a particular device. I'm now performing the double hop, so I'm connected to one desktop. I'm now hopping into another back-end Citrix environment. If I want to prevent that, I very simply come in and say, do you know what? Simon Townsend, under certain rules and conditions, is not able to RDP on 3389 to this particular address. I can save that configuration. That configuration will be saved onto my Citrix servers, and then when I try and run that same test again, instead of being able to connect, I'll now get prompted with a customizable message saying that unfortunately you're not able to access this resource. So that's just an example of how we can prevent the double hop there. Does that make some sense?
Yes, I mean, just wow. I mean, a complete comprehensive security, user personalization, whatever you might want to call that. But complete security, and I think if all these companies which were affected by WannaCry and other ransomwares, if they have Avanti and Citrix together, I think they wouldn't have gone through all this, which happened a few months ago or a few weeks ago.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, exactly. And I think, you know, the combination of linking in with things like NetScaler, being able to see the connecting device as well, can be quite powerful. And as I said, it's not just about security, it's about reducing the number of images, it's about image stability, it's also about compliance, regulation, all that sort of stuff. So very quickly, I'm conscious of time, we should look at the environment manager piece. It's probably the piece that people best know us for. It's really there to try and improve user productivity, improve the user experience, make sure that as a user jumps from one environment to another, it looks and feels identical. It also can significantly reduce the Citrix logon time by the way in which we work, and significantly reduces the amount of profile-related support calls within an environment. For those of you that are unaware, we can replace scripts, VB scripts, PowerShell scripts, and all sorts of utilities and group policies. We have got parallel process in place, which allows us to process things very, very quickly, simultaneously, and we can process things both pre, during, and post logon, but we can also perform various tasks like reapplying a group policy or removing an icon when a user connects, disconnects, locks their workstation, unlocks their workstation, connects to Citrix, disconnects, whatever it might be. We do replace roaming profiles, and we also have some technology I'm going to touch on which allows us to onboard users into our environment as well. So we can take an existing local profile or roaming profile to capture some of the settings out of it and pull it into the environment manager profile, and that actually allows us to move users from a traditional environment onto a Citrix environment much quicker. It also allows us to move users from, say, a 6.5 XenApp environment to a 7.5, and as you'll see, because of the way we communicate, it'll allow us to move a legacy Citrix environment, users profile of a legacy Citrix environment into perhaps a cloud-delivered Citrix environment as well. We go completely cross-platform, doesn't matter what the operating system is, doesn't matter how the application was delivered, and we've got multi-data center support and replication included as standard. And we also, as you'll see, use HTTPS for communication with a backend SQL, and I'll sort of talk through some of the benefits of that. This slide here really demonstrates the differences that exist on a Windows profile. Hopefully most people are aware that as Windows keeps releasing new versions, they keep changing the version of profile, so users' profiles are incompatible. Even the anniversary release of Windows 10 went up to a version 6. And it also means that a traditional desktop profile is not compatible with a XenApp terminal services type profile. What we very simply do is add a layer of abstraction in place there to say, do you know what, we're going to save that user's personalization for their desktop and their applications into a database and deliver that on demand, irrespective of the OS and the application that's being used. So I can very seamlessly jump from a 2008 terminal server to a 2016. I can jump from my local desktop to my Citrix environment and back again, and my persona, my profile, my environment looks and feels very consistent to me. Any changes that I make are being saved in real time using synchronization over HTTPS. This graphic here really starts to demonstrate how we can scale. Each one of our personalization servers supports about 10,000 users. They're IIS boxes, and so we can put load balancers and global load balancers in front of them. We utilize a backend SQL database, so we get things like failover, replication, SQL always on as standard. We're just about to come out with another new feature called GeoSync, which allows us to be very specific about what files we synchronize between those two sites as well. But for any organization that's got a Citrix farm that is spanning 2 data centers, we make sure that those profiles and that personalization is being kept in sync. And that could be traditional desktops accessing that infrastructure, or it could be XenApp, Zen desktop environments doing that as well. Particularly useful when you're looking at deploying non-persistent environments. Our joint customers with Citrix, the highest one we've got now deployed is just about to touch 220,000. We've had various other ones that have been 120, 140,000 seats inside that have been deployed now for many, many, many years. Something like 16 of the top 20 banks use both the Avanti Environment Manager and Citrix XenApp Zen Desktop technology together. I mentioned apps. Citrix obviously acquired Unidesk. We don't care whether it is a layered application or natively installed. Likewise, we don't care whether it's using some of these new technologies like CloudHouse, Numescent to deploy applications down, or whether it has been AppV. I can migrate, I can deal with the profiles across all of those types of application types, and if the user jumps from running an application natively to running an application via AppV, no problem. You can see there's a little screenshot of how we store the information. So that is actually taken from my live machine right now. I can see how big my profile is. I can see that my profile is made up of numerous parts and numerous applications. I can see how big each one is. I can monitor whether it grows, whether it shrinks. I can be very, very granular. I can do things like profile rollback on there as well. Other things that I do want to talk about, within that Environment Manager product, we now support the ability to deal with the Microsoft Office 365 OST file. So we now have the ability to mount a separate expandable VHD as a user logs on, which then stores the user's OST file. Lots and lots of talk about this at the moment, but existing AppSense customers and new ones that are, Avanti customers that have got that Environment Manager product have got the ability to deploy Office 365 in a persistent way on a non-persistent Citrix desktop, and I know that that has been a hot topic for quite some time now. But that support is out, and those documents and best practices for that now exist if you've got the Environment Manager product. Putting user workspace management tools into the cloud is also fully supported, so you can now put our infrastructure into Azure and/or AWS. Likewise, you can put our agents into Zen app and Zen desktops that are being delivered via Azure or AWS as well. And we've seen a massive uptake in organizations now moving at least some of their Citrix workload into the cloud. And again, there are best practice documentation on how they can be set up, how that scales, and how that works for both Azure and web services. But it does give us the ability to now start to support two things. First of all, when organizations are looking at moving their workload, their Zen app, Zen desktop servers into Azure, we can fully support that, and we can deal with the migration of users as they go from on-premise to into the cloud. We can also deal with organizations that are looking at using the cloud as either a DR or, in fact, as the primary in their on-premise as DR. But also those organizations that are now looking at Citrix Cloud itself, we can help accelerate a lot of that. So as you start to push the workloads into Azure, web services, onto some sort of new Talent Box, a Zen server, whatever it might be, we can actually start to help with that. And so what an organization I'm working with at the moment typically looks like is, you end up with the ability now for us to do profile management across data centers, Citrix data centers, where one of them may well be in the cloud and one of them may well be on premise. Good. I spoke earlier about migrations, and I spoke earlier about getting users' profiles from an existing environment, perhaps that doesn't use the Avanti Environment Manager technology. We've got tools built into our solutions now that do this importation of the profile. So it means I can take a horrible 30, 40, 50 meg horrible 1 gig type of profile that might be a roaming profile or a local profile now, and I can say, right, during the logon to the new Citrix environment, I want you to strip out all of the rubbish that's in that profile and just bring me in, a smaller list of profile items. I just want their wallpaper, their Outlook Mappy profile, their office settings, and their line of business application settings to come across, and I want you to completely disregard all of the other junk that is in that roaming profile, so that I can, from that moment forward, provide a nice fast log on, have no profile corruption, and don't end up with profile bloat. One more thing before I go, every single Avanti customer, whether you're using our patch technology, the user workspace management suite, or you're an existing customer that has got something like Environment Manager or Application Manager on Citrix, we do now offer the ability to download and get access free of charge to our extraction technology. Extraction is a dashboarding tool. It doesn't collect any data itself. It feeds off other systems, other SQL databases, and it provides IT the ability to create beautiful customizable dashboards. And you can have connectors into various different technologies, some from Avanti, some from third parties. And so I can start to mix and match my dashboards, and I can start to display, how many patches have not been deployed, how many vulnerabilities I've got alongside, how many unauthorized executables have been run. I can see how big my profile sizes are growing and how does that compare to user logon times. We are currently working on a Citrix connector, I'm also pleased to say, which means I could create a dashboard that very easily looks to the database that Res Automation is using, looks at the database that's in use for Environment Manager profiles, and pulls in some of the database information from a Citrix environment, perhaps looking at what the last logon time were, or how many applications or users and sessions are currently in use. So a very powerful dashboarding tool that Ivanti customers actually get as part of investing in any of the Avanti technology. There's a cheat sheet there in terms of why we're better together: happier users, faster logons, consistent experience. We've obviously got the Office 365 piece there, the ability to migrate to the cloud and deal with upgrades significantly quicker. I was only on the phone to a customer today talking to them about how we're going to help them move from an old 6.5 environment to their new Citrix environment. And then obviously the security piece, making sure that those desktops and those applications are patched. We've implemented application control and made sure that users aren't roaming the globe with admin rights as well, and preventing things like the double hop. Next steps, please feel free to go to our website. There is a web page there. This particular website is entitled Consolidate Your VDI Images. That really is talking about how we can deal with reducing image management, making the non-persistent environment persistent for the user, improving logon times, and that would cover off everything from a Zen app and a Zen desktop environment. But from there, you can download white papers, you can see the joint case studies that we've done across the globe, and there's some good video case studies on that website as well, and you can also get access to the software as well as obviously get in contact with any of the sales or technical teams. So on that note, do we have any questions, Neil? I think I may have.
Right. Right. So that was a lot of information. Lot of we've covered a lot today in terms of what the Ivanti user environment manager can do, and a lot of other things. I think we are just about time, but we have a couple of questions. I think we can run through them very quickly.
Yep.
So one question. I think this was very obvious, and we talked about this before the webinar as well. So so the question is, since Arias has been acquired by Ivanti, and how is it integrated with existing Absence products, as there are a lot of similarities between Absence and Arias products?
Yeah, no problem. So RES had a number of technologies and products. One of the best known ones was the Res Workspace Manager technology, and that Res Workspace Manager technology competed in the same space as the Absence Environment Manager technology. And so there is some similarity there. Res Workspace can deal with profile management, as an example. It saves its profiles to SMB shares, but ultimately allows you to deliver a persistent environment in a non-persistent VDI environment. It also does desktop configuration, so in the same way that Environment Manager can put icons on the desktop and set the environment up, then Res Workspace can do the same. Those two products are very similar. They operate and use a slightly different infrastructure, but I've seen organizations deploy both. Not simultaneously, by the way, but I've seen various organizations across the globe choose one or the other. Those two products are going to continue separately for the foreseeable future. We are not end of life in any of those products. Both those products have got a 12, 18, 24 month roadmap ahead of them, and so in the interest of keeping existing customers happy, we are going to keep both Res Workspace and Absence Environment Manager going, and can simultaneously, customers can choose which product they would like to invest in. Having said that, from the security point of view, application control, some of the patch technology that Avanti has already got is already fairly mature. So if you're looking at security moving forward and you're not using the Res technology, then I would suggest looking at some of the other aspects of the Avanti portfolio and what we can do there, and add on top of what Res already does. And samely, if you're looking at automation or linking your workspace management into other systems, HR systems, pay systems as an example, then automation and the identity management that Res brings continues to be a key part of what we do moving forward. So the Res products will become Avanti products. Automation and identity management forms a very, very large part of what we do moving forward, ties very nicely into our service management offering. But on the workspace management, profile management, there are 2 products there, and you can choose which one suits you best.
Right. I personally think it's a great acquisition, and although there's a few overlap, but as you did mention, there's a lot of things which really builds a comprehensive product. Right.
Sorry, Neil, as I look at the other questions, 365
right.
OST support, we can get those documents out to those people that have requested it. Thank you for that, Bob. And Rod, you had a question there around extraction and moving an existing customer up to Desktop Now 10.1. Yes, no problem at all. You will be entitled to extraction. So you will be able to create dashboards based on the user workspace management center database and the personalization database, and you can get some pretty damn nice looking reports out of that show database growth, database size, how many agents have been deployed, what configs have been deployed, and you can display that right alongside some of the other connectors that we've got. Just to be clear on that, you don't have to pay for an Avanti connector for extraction, but if you wanted to link it into SCCM or BMC or ServiceNow or Active Directory, then those connectors are chargeable connectors. But you get the platform and the connectors to Avanti products built in with the license cost of an Avanti product.
Right. That's very helpful, Simon. Thanks so much. And we have some more questions, but I think in the interest of time, we'll wrap up for today. I see a few attendees asking if we'll be sharing the slides and recording. Yes, we will share the recording with all the attendees and registrants within a day or 2 to your registered email addresses. And with that said, we're about to end today's webinar. I want to take a moment to thank Simon again for making this fantastic presentation and sharing all the great insights about Ivanti and the new acquisition. Thank you very much, Simon.
My pleasure. Apologies, I overrun as per usual.
No, no problem. And last but not the least, I want to thank each one of you who are attending our webinar today in the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar series. And this shall conclude our broadcast for today. Thanks everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Neil.